Dungeons and Dragons Endless Quest. In this book, you are the fighter. This book is called Escape the Underdark by Matt Forbeck. Halt, adventurer, and read these words before you proceed. You are about to embark on a journey to where only you could possibly say. It is not a journey like any you have been on before, where you start at page 1 and continue on a straight course until you reach the end. Instead, you will be presented with many choices along the way. Each time you are faced with one such choice, make your decision from the options given, and then follow the directions to continue your adventure. Once your quest has come to an end, either favorably or, I'm afraid in some instances, it is foretold to gruesomely, return to the beginning or the last choice and try again. This is not a journey for those who prefer to sit back and let others make the tricky decisions. This is a journey for a leader, a true hero, one who is not afraid to converse with dragons, explore the Underdark, or face the dreaded two-headed demogorgon. If this doesn't sound like you, turn back now and forget you ever came this way. But if this whiff of adventure has whet your appetite, then forward with you, my friend, and good luck. The last you remember, you were in a tavern, about to embark on your new career as an adventurer. A pale dwarf in a hooded cloak sat you down to have a drink, while he offered you a map to a dungeon he claimed was packed with treasure chests, ripe for plundering. But then the room got fuzzy, and you started to spin. You nodded off right there at the table, and the next you knew, you woke up here. Only you're not exactly sure where here is. It's cold, dark, and dank, and the floor is nothing but bare, rough-hewn rock. So are 3 of the walls, but the 4th holds a heavy-looking door with a small barred window, just big enough to see out of. You sit up, and the chains that connect the manacles on your wrists to the belt locked around your waist jangle. You swallow hard and realize that an iron collar is constricting your neck. You groan, although you're not sure if it's from the pain in your head or the despair in your heart. As you do, a black-skinned male with long white hair and elven features, a drow clearly, although you've never met one before, appears at the window in the door, a torch blazing in his hand. "Finally awake, are you?" he says with a vicious grin that bares his sharp white teeth. "Welcome to Velkenvelv." Where? A shiver runs down your spine as you realize just how much trouble you're in. "The Underdark," a voice says behind you. You spin around and see that you're not alone in your cage. In fact, there are several others trapped here with you. A deep gnome, an orc, a dwarf, and even a battered drow. The dwarf was the one who spoke to you. The others don't even meet your gaze. "You're trapped in the Underdark," she says, "enslaved by the drow." "And there's no way out," the orc growls, "so don't bother trying to escape." The guard laughs at the look of growing horror on your face and then walks away to let you stew in it. You scramble after him and grab the bars on the window of the door. You try to rattle them, testing their strength, but they're as solid as the rock that surrounds you. Just like an orc to give up, Ront. The dwarf's voice drips with scorn. The orc snorts at her, just like a dwarf to not know when she's beat, Eldeth. I'm not beat, you tell them all, not yet at least. There has to be some way out of here. The deep gnome laughs at you. We're stuck in a giant, spider-infested cavern a half-mile beneath the surface of Faerun. None of us even know how we got here, and they work us so hard that the only thing we're good for afterward is sleeping it off. If you can find a way out, though, we'll follow, Eldeth says, her eyes brimming with her last bit of hope. Here comes your first decision. Do you bide your time, fight, or escape? You want to escape? Okay. You decide to observe closely and seize the soonest chance to break out of your cage. But the next morning, Eldeth tells you that time is short. The guards say a merchant caravan is arriving from Menzo Baranzan in a week or so. They'll take us all away. She hushes up when the guards come to escort you and the others off to your first day of work. They set you to breaking big rocks into smaller ones. When no one's looking, you grab a handful of gravel and stuff it into your pocket, a plan for escape starting to form your mind. Your arms are sore and your hands blistered when the guards haul you back to your cell. You stumble against the door as you enter and shove a chunk of gravel into the door's lock so that it can't close properly. As the door clangs shut, you spin around and throw yourself against it to keep the guards from inspecting it. The guards laugh as you reach for them through the barred window. A lot of spirit in that one of them says. We'll have to beat it out of him. You snarl at them, but they walk away laughing. Once they're out of sight, and you can no longer hear their footsteps echoing around the passageways outside of your cell, you test the door and finds that it swings free. The other prisoners gasp in amazement, but you silence them with a finger to your lips. Who's with me, you ask. What about the guards? Ront says. You'll never get past them, the battered Drow prisoner, whom you've come to know is named Sareth, says with a chuckle. Not without a distraction. Fortunately, there's one on the way, interjects the deep gnome, who's told you his name is Jimjar, as he steps forward, stroking his thin beard. What are you talking about? Eldeth demands. Jimjar shoots her a wary look. I'm a scout. A spy, you mean, says Sareth. Jimjar ignores him. I was on my way back home to Blingdenstone when I was captured. The Drow never would have caught me normally, but I was in a hurry to report in. Why? You wonder what could scare Jimjar so much that he'd let himself stumble into a pack of Drow slavers. What news did you have? Something is stirring deep in the Underdark, Jimjar says with a shiver. Something evil. Heard rumors about that too, Ront says. Some kind of demon war. What does that have to do with us, you ask? You don't have long to make your way out of here, and you don't care to waste time on idle gossip. The war is boiling over, Jimjar says. It's rising up through the Underdark. And you think it's going to reach here, tonight? should have been here already, might never come at all. Who's to know what's been planned in the deepest parts of the Underdark? You're not much help. You're leaving either way, right? Jimjar points to the door with his chin. What's stopping you? You push on the door, and it swings open quietly on well-oiled hinges. Nothing, you say. What's stopping the rest of you? The others stare at you in the open door for a long moment. Then a horrible screech echoes in the distance. Jimjar smiles and taps his ear. Demons, he says, right on time. Now's our chance, you tell the others. Let's go. We need to get rid of our shackles first, Jimjar says. He pulls a lockpick from inside his cheek and sets to work. In a few moments, you're all free. Somewhere in the distance, Drow soldiers shout, but the horrible screams only grow louder. We should go north, Jimjar suggests as he bolts from the cell. To Menza Baranzan? Ron says, forget it, south. Toward Gracklestug. Eldest shakes her head. I'd rather take my chances with the Drow than the Duergar. Jimjar chuckles at them. Either way works for me as long as we get out of here. He looks to you to decide. So, champ, which way is it? Do you want to head north toward Menzo Baranzan? Or do you want to go south toward Gracklestug? North? Okay. North it is, you say as you emerge from the cell. They'll never expect us to head toward Menzo Baranzan. 'Cause it's a stupid idea, Ront says. I'm appalled to have to agree with an orc, Sareth says as he joins Ront in turning south. I thought for sure you'd join us, you tell the Drow. There's nothing for me back home, he says with a bitter frown. I was imprisoned here because I was accused of murder. The only thing waiting for me in Menzo Baranzan is Drow justice. He glances at Ront. I'll take my chances in the wilds of the Underdark instead. With that, he and Ront dash off in the other direction, leaving you with Eldeth and Jimjar. You gesture toward the deep gnome. You're the scout here. Show us the way. Jimjar sniffs the air and points to the east. Brimstone, that means demons. Then he pads off to the north. You follow close on his heels, and Eldeth trots after you. You hear the shouts and screeching fading in the distance as you begin to move, and you hope that there might be a chance for this day to end well for you after all. Then an arrow lances out of the darkness and catches Eldeth in the chest. She screams in pain as she falls, and you spot a trio of well-armed Drow guards charging your way. Jimjar takes off at a sprint. You glance down at Eldeth, but she's already dead. Another arrow spangs along the passageway, and you turn and chase after Jimjar as fast as you can. You do your best to keep up with Jimjar, but he has too much of a head start on you. You lose the deep gnome in the darkness, and soon after that, you lose yourself as well. You try to comfort yourself with the fact that you've already escaped the Drow, but the fact that you're alone and defenseless in the dark balances against that. As your eyes adjust, though, you realize the Underdark isn't entirely dark. Bits of lichen on the walls give off a soft glow that's enough to walk by, if not run. Still, it doesn't stop you from stumbling the moment the walls around you give way, as the passage you're in opens wide into a gigantic cavern. You tumble off the edge of the cliff and shout in fear as you fall into the darkness. You expect to fall to your death, but instead, you find yourself caught in a massive massive spiderweb that stretches over the cavern's distant floor like a sticky net. You hope that whatever spun the web isn't near enough to have heard you and come looking to make you its prey. Instead, a moment later, a pair of young goblins emerge from the darkness, sliding along the web on slippery feet faster than you could walk on it. They begin giggling at you. "You look lost," one of them says. "Real lost," said the other. "Maybe we should let this poor human be, brother." "No," you say before they have a chance to leave. "You're right, I'm lost, and I need help finding my way out." "What do you think, Yuck Yuck?" one of the goblins says to the other. "Sounds like it might not be boring, at least." "Why not spider bait?" the other one responds. "Unboring is good by me." "All right," spider bait says with a grin. He points to the right. "That way's Menzoberranzan, which we won't have anything to do with. Those drow aren't too nasty." Yuck Yuck points to the left, "And that way's the Dark Lake. Which way is most unlost for you?" Do you want to go to Menzoberranzan or head toward the Dark Lake? You want to go to the Dark Lake? Okay. The two goblins run ahead of you, guiding you through the gigantic web-bridged chasm which seems to go on for miles. There are moments when they disappear so thoroughly that you're sure they've abandoned you, but they always return a moment later, gliding in and out of the darkness to check and see if you're okay. "Most people think the silken paths are crazy dangerous," Yuck Yuck says as he slides across the web on greased feet far faster than you can walk on it. Spiderbait chuckles at that. "Sure, it's full of monsters, but what part of the Underdark isn't? Just gotta know where to step." To their credit, the goblins do a great job of getting you safely across the chasm. Once you move back into the tunnels and caverns that make up most of the rest of the Underdark, though, it becomes clear that they're out of their depth. They stop and argue about which way to go several times, and in the end they rely on your instincts to guide them. They're not the best navigators, but it's nice to have their company in this dark and scary place. Soon enough, you find that the walls of the passageways through which you're creeping are damp. Some of them drip or even run with water. Hoping to stay dry, you try not to touch the walls as you go, but it is so tight in some places that you are soon soaked to the bone. "Good sign," Yuck Yuck says. "We're getting closer to the Dark Lake." "Sure we're not under it?" Spiderbait asks. He's just nervous enough to frighten you, but you don't have much choice except to continue on. Yuck Yuck giggles at your fear. "Don't worry about it," he says. "If the lake comes crashing down on us, we won't have any time to suffer." You repress the urge to snarl at the goblin and keep pressing on until the ceiling above you starts to creak. You stop in your tracks and raise your eyes to the ceiling. As you peer through the dim light, you can see a large crack already starting to form in the stones. Spiderbait grabs you by the hand and hauls you along. "We gotta move," he says, "fast." You nearly trip as he yanks you into motion, but just manage to keep your footing. The creaking sound turns into a cracking noise, and then a horrible rumbling you can feel all the way through your toes. "Cave in," Yuck Yuck yells. "Run." You sweep both of the goblins up into your arms and charge forward as fast as you can. The ceiling begins to come down around you, and for a moment you are sure this will be the end. Buried in the Underdark, no one will ever even hear of your daring escape from your captors. you dash forward, dodging debris cascading from above. You come around a bend and see that the passageway you're in opens up into a small cavern. "Move it," Spiderbait shouts. "We can make it." You put one final surge of energy into your leaden legs and race forward. As you near the opening, the sound of the collapse becomes deafening. You dive toward the opening and sail through it just as the passageway behind you disappears in a cloud of rubble and dust. As you and the goblins cough your lungs clear, you look up and spot a skeleton floating in the air before you, along with a sword and shield. They look like they should be falling to the floor, along with the rubble that landed behind you. But they just hang there, suspended in something. You start to back away, not too sure what this new horror is. Then a voice sounds in your head, a voice that's not your own. "Greetings," it says. "I am Glabagool." You realize then that the skeleton, sword, and shield are floating inside a transparent, gelatinous cube. Do you want to attack the cube, or do you want to make friends with Glabagool? Sure, you only live once. Let's make friends with this weird thing. That happens to look like this. You stand up and stare at the cube creature. In its depths, you spy a floating pair of eyes looking back at you. "You can talk," you say. "Telepathically," Glabagool says. "Can you hear it too?" you ask the goblins. They nod wordlessly, gaping at the floating skeleton. "I mean you no harm," the gelatinous cube says. "You tell that to whoever is floating inside you," says Yuck Yuck, disgust pulling at his lip. Glabagool quivers with regret. "He wouldn't stop attacking me. I had no choice." You clap the goblins on the shoulders and hold them steady in your grasp. "Point us in the direction of the dark lake, and we'll be on our way," you tell Glabagool. "Oh, that's easy. Just follow me." The creature moves slowly but surely through the passages, which are carved from the living rock, forming some kind of abandoned temple. Eventually, you and the two goblins, led by the cube creature Glabagool, reach a larger chamber with a hole in the ceiling through which water is pouring. It seems to take forever, but you wait until the chamber fills with water. I'm sorry, I skipped a sentence. Once the chamber floods, Glabagool explains, you should be able to swim out of here. It seems to take forever, but you wait until the chamber fills with water, and then swim to the hole in the top. You can reach the ceiling just fine, but you have to boost the goblins up. Once they're safe, you climb out after them. The dark lake should be close, Glabagool thinks at you. Just follow the water. Thanks for your help, you say to the gelatinous cube. I'll never forget you. Nor I you. After all, you're the only person I've ever met who hasn't tried to kill me. You try not to think too much about that as you follow the goblins, who have already scampered into the darkness. You find them sitting on the shore of a vast underground lake that seems to stretch forever. It could be almost pretty if you weren't so desperate to get out of this place. We're stuck, Yuck Yuck says. Nothing but water behind us and nothing but water ahead, says Spiderbait. Realizing that the goblin brothers are right, you sit down next to the goblins and stare out at the water, waiting for your eyes to adjust to the darkness and considering your options. There are things in the water that glow softly, and move with a slow and sinuous grace. Beautiful as they are, you can't help but wonder if they might try to eat you if you try to swim for it. The goblins tense and dig their fingers into your arms. "Ow, stop it," you cry. "Look," Spiderbait whispers, "it's right there." You squint into the darkness and see a silhouette outlined against the glowing things in the water. It's vaguely human-shaped, but with the head of a gigantic fish. It rises out of the dark lake and approaches you slowly. "Greetings, air breathers," it says in a burbling voice. "I am Ploop Ploop Peen of the Kuo-toa, who call the dark lake home. You seem lost." You don't see any reason to lie about it. "Can you help us?" you ask. "Of course," Ploop Ploop Peen says, "but only if you'll help me take over my hometown." Do you want to go along with Ploop Ploop Peen? We can either help him take over his hometown or choose not to trust him. Of course, we'll do anything to get where we're going. We just want to get out. We're going to help him. You don't want to get involved in Kuo-toan politics, but you don't see that you have much of a choice. You nod your agreement, and Ploop Ploop Peen shows you a wide-mouthed grin that displays rows of small, sharp teeth. "Excellent," the fishman says. "Then, as part of a grand ruse, I will bring you into our city, Sloobadop, as my prisoners, and I will allow you to be sacrificed on the altar of the Deep Father." "I don't like this plan," Yuck Yuck says, and you don't blame him. Ploop Ploop Peen dismisses the goblin's protest with a wave of a thinny hand. "There's no need for concern. You will not be harmed. Once you are in place, you simply need to fight back against the guards there. I will take advantage of that distraction to launch a coup against our leaders and my daughter." "Sounds dangerous," Spiderbait says, "and tricky. Far less dangerous than sitting out here on the edge of the dark lake," Ploop Ploop Peen says, "or trying to cross the waters on your own." He puts his slimy hands on his hips. "If I wished to harm you, I could easily kill you here and now, or I could wait for you to die on your own." Ploop Ploop Peen gazes into your eyes with his wide black orbs. "You help me out now, and I'll help you later. You have my word." "All right," you say. The goblins both object, but you shush them fast. "We don't have much of a choice." "Wise decision," Ploop Ploop Peen says, flashing his sharp teeth again. "I'll be right back with a boat for you, and we'll leave immediately." While the Kuo-toan is gone, you reassure the goblins that you're not blindly trusting him. "Just be ready to follow my lead," you tell them. Soon after, you find yourself slipping into the town of Sloobadop on little more than a wooden raft, towed by Ploop Ploop Peen. "Ahoy the town," he shouts as the raft brings you in. "I have captives." A group of warriors line the dock and eye you warily as they greet their leader. Do you want to go along with the plan, or do you want to betray Ploop Ploop Peen? Go along with the plan? Okay. Ploop Ploop Peen brings you and the two goblins to the shrine of the Sea Mother, which looks like someone took apart a giant crayfish and used it to decorate a 9-foot gaze at her beauty, he says. She shall save us all. Sacrilege, cries another Kuo-toan, arriving with a large force of warriors. Such outsiders belong not to the Sea Mother, but the Deep Father. You dare too much, daughter, Plooploopine says. You cannot have these warm bloods for your evil sacrifices. And you cannot stop progress. Plooploopine sticks out his lower lip as if he is considering the situation. Fine, blop, blip, pop, blop. I had to choose a book with such difficult words. Blop, blip, pod, he says to his daughter. Take them, and may your deep father choke on them. Blop, blip, pod and her warriors escort you and the goblins to a shrine made of a pair of dead octopuses tied together atop a dead manta ray that stretched over a hide, covering a low altar. Ew, Spiderbait says with a shudder. His brother shushes him, but you can see that Yuck Yuck is shivering too. As Blop Blip Pod is bringing you up to the stinking altar, Ploop Ploopine steps forward and clobbers her over the head. The warriors on his side level their spears at her supporters and attack. You kick one Kuo-toan over, snatch away its spear, and then enter the fight yourself. An enemy warrior charges at you, but you tackle him onto the altar and pin him there with the spear. For a moment, he looks at you in horror. But as his blood starts to spill onto the altar, a smile plays on his lips, sending a shiver down your spine. You turn from him to find a full-on battle raging around you, pitting Kuo-toa against one another. Yuck Yuck and Spiderbait are hiding behind the altar, and you stand guard over them, keeping them safe from the brawl. The warriors are all too busy with one another to pay any attention to you. Just as Blop Blip Pod comes to, rises on wobbly legs, and turns toward you, a horrifying rumbling comes from the direction of the dark lake. He has risen, Blop Blip Pod shouts as she stabs a long finger toward the most distant parts of the dark lake. Lee-moo-goo-goon has come. What's a Lee-moo-goo-goon? Spiderbait asks as he and Yuck Yuck cling to your legs. You peer into the darkness, and somewhere out there you see a hellish light erupt from the water. Another one follows it soon after, and the two lights move in sync with each other, like two glowing eyes floating in a gigantic skull. As the humongous beast grows closer, it slaps at the water with two tremendous tentacles, each split about halfway down. Soon, you can see that the two lights are actually mouths set in twinned heads, each glowing from the fires burning within the belly of the shared torso. Demogorgon, you say. They mean demogorgon. According to my sources back home, he's a demon prince from the abyss, and the Kuo-toa have just summoned him. This must be what brought the demons to Velkenvelv, you realize. Demogorgon has been preparing to attack the Underdark for a while, and now you're right in his path. Now, are we going to fight, flee, or trick him? That's what I would choose too. Let's flee. You don't know exactly how you managed to get between the Prince of Demons and an aspiring set of his worshippers, but you don't see how sticking around to argue about it could possibly do you any good. You grab Yuck Yuck and Spiderbait by their hands and sprint for the back part of the cavern you're in, letting Plooploopine and Bloplitpod battle it out for the fate of Slooblodop. You discover that you're not the only one who's had that idea. Dozens of Kuo-toa are running in the same direction as you. Being more comfortable in the water than on land, they don't move fast, and you and the goblins quickly outdistance them. Once you reach the part of the cavern farthest from the dark lake's shore, you spot a passageway framed by blazing torches. The guard post there has been abandoned, so there's no one to stop you as you grab one of the torches and race into the darkness beyond. Soon, Yuck asks to stop, pointing out that there's no way a creature the massive size of demogorgon could follow you into a corridor this small, but you force the goblins to press on. It's a strange and wild world, you tell them, and I wouldn't be surprised at all to run into a demon prince who could change his size at will. Do you really think he can do that? Spiderbait asks. I have no idea, you reply, and I have no desire to find out. You keep moving until both of the goblins are so tired that they can't make their legs go anymore. You reluctantly agree to a short rest, and you spend the entire time with your ears pricked, listening as hard as you can for any sign the demon prince or any of his followers might be after you. Eventually, you realize that if Demogorgon were really after you, by this point you'd already be dead. Knowing that the demon prince is down here in the Underdark, though, makes you even more determined to find your way to the surface. Over the next several days, you push the goblins hard. You survive on water, dripping into little pools here and there, and on mushrooms that you find that the goblins declare safe to eat. Every time you come to a fork in the passages, you work your way farther and farther up. One day, you reach a large cavern and something feels different. As you cross to the other side, you realize that you can actually feel a breeze coming from up above, and it carries the scent of fresh air. We made it, boys, you tell Yuck and Spiderbait. We're free. You're free, you mean, Yuck says. Spiderbait gives you a crushing hug. Just do one thing for us. Don't forget us. Do you say goodbye, or do you insist that they come with you? They've stuck with us for so long. I think it's a good idea to keep them with you. Are you kidding? You say to the goblins. I can't leave you here. Without you two, I never would have escaped the Underdark at all. From now on, the three of us stick together. But we're goblins, Yuck says in despair. They won't let us into the cities we've heard about up there. Places like Waterdeep and Neverwinter, or Baldur's Gate, or even Little Daggerford. They'll think we're evil, Spiderbait says. They'll try to kill us on the spot. We're much safer down here. You kneel next to the two goblins and put your hands on their shoulders so you can look them straight in the eyes. I'm not going to lie to you, you tell them. We've been through far too much together for that. You're right. If you come with me, I can't take you into any of the amazing cities along the Sword Coast. They won't trust you, even if I tell them about all the amazing things you've done for me. The goblins' faces fall, and you realize they were hoping you knew of a place that would accept them the same way it would accept you. But you don't know of such a place. Not in the Underdark, and certainly not in the world above it. But that's okay, you tell the goblins. It's a big, wide, wonderful world out there, filled with sunshine and warmth and fresh air and fields you can run all day in and not find the other side. There's more than enough room for us there outside of those cities. And plenty of adventure to be had as well, I bet. You stand up and reach out your hands to the goblins. It's your choice, you tell them. I won't make you come with me if you want to return to the Underdark, but I would do everything in my power to ensure your safety above ground if you did want to join your paths with mine. What do you say? They glance at each other for a moment and then leap forward at the same time. You turn and lead them toward the incoming wind and the open lands beyond, toward the light. The end. We finally got a happy ending. And I confess, I went through and chose beforehand the paths that would give us a happy ending. Sometimes I choose randomly, as in my previous 2 videos in this series, but I think every once in a while it's nice to have a happy ending instead of dying a gruesome death. Thank you for spending this time with me, and I hope you have a wonderful night.